Hello again everybody, this is MrNoobTubeGamer here, and I'm going to talk about a subject that I've been meaning to talk about, but now that there's a few more details that have been going around about the game, I feel like now is the right time to make a video. There's no gameplay yet, there's none of that, and to be honest, I think there's a reason why there hasn't been any gameplay, but I'll get into that later. So, as everyone knows, about last year, DICE announced that they will be working on the next Battlefront game, next Star Wars Battlefront game, because it's been since 2005 since another Battlefront game has been released, after there's been a whole bunch of issues with the development studio behind it. I think they shut down or whatever, and Lucas Arts, the Lucas Games or whatever, shutting down after Disney closed them was, really, it didn't affect Star Wars Battlefront 3 at all, because from what it seems like, Star Wars Battlefront 3 was not coming anytime soon. But if anything, EA having the rights to the Battlefront series kind of made it seem like, okay, well, there's a better chance that the Battlefront series will be revived than just having it lie around there doing nothing, right? But as soon as I heard all these details about the game, first of all, I never really was hyped about Battlefront, the new one that DICE is working on, for a few reasons, so I'm going to get into that now. First, a few reasons why I didn't get hyped is because, well, this is EA we're talking about, and this is DICE. And they tend to drop the ball a few times with a lot of franchises. For example, Medal of Honor series, which is currently, I think they're discontinued. Medal of Honor series, I'm pretty sure they're discontinued. I think they said like they're on a hiatus or whatever, which isn't, you know, it's another term for saying that they're gone, basically. And the reason why they're gone is because EA totally dropped the ball on the Medal of Honor series. They were too fixated on competing with Black Ops at the time, and competing with Black Ops 2 as well, that they didn't really care about making the game good. I mean, I enjoyed Medal of Honor 2010, that's not the problem, but I think they could have made it a lot better and a lot more unique if the developers weren't rushed like they always are, because EA's mentality is that we do not create a product to be better than Call of Duty, we just do it to compete with Call of Duty. And those are two completely different things, right? You can compete with Call of Duty without actually making it good, because all they're fixated on is having the release date at a certain time. And with Battlefield Hardline, they delayed it so EA could kind of try to prove to consumers or try to convince them that that's not the case. They don't care. All they care about isn't competing with Call of Duty. It's about making the game as good as it is. And to be honest, Hardline wasn't really that great after they delayed it. Like, it wasn't really that much different from the June 2014 beta as opposed to the February 2015 beta. I mean, yeah, there were a few differences, but nothing like, oh my god, this is a completely different game. They did that for publicity because EA knows that every year they're on the verge of having the worst company award. Not award, but you know, being infamous for being the worst company ever. And I think they got that 2 years in a row, and I think just recently they stopped getting that after they got rid of the online passes and whatnot, right? But I don't know, it's just like, I don't understand where the mentality is. You try to compete with Call of Duty more than you try to make your games good. And games like Medal of Honor have shown that. And even some Battlefield games. Battlefield 4, for example, which is what I'm playing right now. Sure, right now it's freaking amazing and I enjoy playing it more than I enjoy playing Call of Duty. And you guys know how much I like Call of Duty, right? But at launch, the game was fucking terrible. I don't remember it, because I didn't buy the game at launch. Right? But the thing is that at launch it was abysmal. Like, the online was horrible. And the only reason why that was the case is because they were rushing it to compete with Call of Duty Ghosts. And you know what? To be honest, even if they did have the most polished game, they probably wouldn't have beat Call of Duty anyway. But they would have had a much better chance. Because Battlefield basically killed themselves. If they can't beat Call of Duty Ghosts, which was considered... I mean, it was a financial success, but in terms of criticism and critic reviews, it was probably the weakest installment in the Call of Duty series besides Call of Duty 3. And when you can't even compete with that, that just proves that you guys need to stop trying to compete with Call of Duty and fixate more on creating a quality product, which brings me more into Battlefront. I'm sorry, I've been off topic, but trust me, I'm leading into it. I feel like with Battlefront, they're more fixated on competing with Call of Duty than anything else. And I know that sounds crazy, Star Wars versus Call of Duty, but if you think about it, look at DICE's track record. DICE developed Medal of Honor 2010, the multiplayer, and they developed Bad Company 2, which actually, Bad Company 2 didn't compete really with Modern Warfare 2, but I mean like Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4, they developed those games, and those games were fairly rushed. I mean, Battlefield 3, thank God, was a polished product, even at launch, but I just feel like even though Star Wars and Call of Duty are two completely different things, considering that it's DICE and it's a first-person shooter, they want to compete with it. And there are a few, there's some evidence behind that. So let's look at a few of the news that has been released regarding Battlefront. So one thing about Battlefront is that there is no space battles. The one thing that basically made Battlefront 2 an amazing game as opposed to Battlefront 1, which honestly I prefer Battlefront 1 over Battlefront 2, but that's besides the point. I only prefer Battlefront 1 in terms of maps and things like that. I thought the maps were a lot more enjoyable on Battlefront 1. Like Geonosis was better in Battlefront 1 than it was in 2, and you know, a whole bunch of other maps were better, like Mos Eisley. Not Mos Eisley, the other Tatooine map in Battlefront 1 was freaking amazing. And you know, they took away space battles, and for no good reason. They just said, you know, we felt like space battles wouldn't make any sense. How would space battles not make any sense if that's one of the pivotal features that made Battlefront stick out compared to other first-person shooters at the time? And not just first-person shooters, but to all the licensed Star Wars games that have ever existed. Force Unleashed, freaking Old Republic, any of those Star Wars games. Battlefront 2 is the best-selling Star Wars game of all time, right? And you really think that part of that wasn't to do with space combat? Because it really, space combat is a pivotal moment in pivotal feature in the Battlefront series, and the fact that EA ignored that fact, or I don't even know if they ignored it, they just, it's damage control, really. They can't say that it wouldn't make any sense to have space combat. They're rushing the product, and they have to have a reason to basically give an excuse to not have space combat. And let's see, what's another reason? Oh yeah, it's only 20 versus 20 multiplayer online. And you might be saying to yourself, well, 20 versus 20 isn't bad. Well, if you look to the fact that Star Wars Battlefront 1 and 2 had 64 players online, as opposed to 40 players in this game, I could see if it was last-gen consoles versus current-gen, because you know how Battlefield 3 had that, where it was 24 players on one system versus 64 players on the PC, Battlefield 3, right? But here's the thing. It's only coming on the current generation as well as PC. There's no such thing as limitations, really. You can't really blame it on limitations at all. I think the only reason why they have those 20 versus 20 players is, like I said, because they're rushing the thing too much. And I don't know if I could blame the developers as much as I could blame EA. But honestly, I don't know who to blame, to be honest. Because, God, it just gets me frustrated, because this was like one of my favorite franchises when I was a little kid. But I didn't really notice the online about Battlefront, because for for two reasons mainly. One, I was a little kid and I didn't really understand, like, I didn't really care about online because I was like, you know, I was a young kid. Really, I didn't really give a shit about online. And another reason is because I had the PS2 version and PlayStation 2 wasn't really the easiest thing to go online. You couldn't just, you know, connect to a Wi-Fi network and do whatever you gotta do. Because I don't even think they had wireless modems back then. They didn't. So, put all those factors in, and I really didn't really give a shit, to be honest, about online. But the single player had 64 players, you know, the instant action. So, honestly, if even without online, I would notice a huge difference in players. Especially if the maps are bigger in Battlefront 3, right? But if the maps are the same size or even a little bit smaller, it's still going to be an issue because it just proves the fact that a game that was made in 2005 has more features than the game that's going to be released in 2015. And what's really the only edge that this game has over the other games? And I'll tell you the only one. The Frostbite engine and the graphics and blah 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 blah. That's really the only advantage that they have. If you really want to play the game for graphics, don't get me wrong, I can be a graphics whore at times, right? When it comes to graphics, I just love... Graphics are important to me. But when you take away all these features, it just doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't make any sense at all, and it's just really frustrating, to be honest. And I'm just going to talk about one more thing before I end this video. That kind of got me upset, but not really. The fact that they have no iron sights in this game. Now, I know a main argument about this is that, oh, well, the other Battlefront games did not have iron sights. Do you really think that's the reason why EA decided not to have iron sights in their game? If they really wanted to stay true to the Battlefront series, they would have 64 players still. They would still have, what's it called, droids and clone troopers as well, and they would still have 60. I mean, I already mentioned that. What's the other thing? What's the other good point that I brought up? Oh yeah, they would still have balls to make things different. To be honest, wait, that made no sense. I'm sorry, that was just a spaz out moment. But honestly, they would still have this shit going on that were in the other Battlefront games if they really wanted to stay true. Oh yeah, space combat. That's the thing that I wanted to bring up. I'm sorry, that was a total brain fart. Right? But God, I don't know what to say anymore. There's really not much left to be said. Oh yeah, iron sights. So like I said, that's really, if they really want to stay true, that's not a reason why they don't have iron sights. Let me tell you the reason why they don't have iron sights. Ever since DICE revealed that they will be working on the next Battlefront game, people have been like, oh, this is going to be Battlefield reskinned with Star Wars in it. Right? Kind of like how, this is an odd example, but I know it's a mod, but still, Call of Duty 4 Galactic Warfare, which was a Star Wars mod for Call of Duty 4, you know, it was a Star Wars reskin with Call of Duty. And they're going to be like, oh, this is going to be a reskin with Battlefield. And they didn't have the iron sights just so they wouldn't have that comparison. That's really the only reason why. They did not want to have that comparison. And you know what? They're still going to have that comparison anyway. There's going to be a lot of Battlefield mechanics, I'm sure, that will be implemented into this game. That's just how it's going to be. Okay? So, that's it for this rant on why I think that EA is going to kill the Battlefront series. If they do decide to make more Battlefront games after this, which, honestly, I don't know, I hope not, if they're going to keep going with this stuff, but if they do make a sequel, they better have space combat and everything, and droids and clone troopers and whatnot, because if they don't, I'm honestly, with no clone troopers or anything, and droids, because honestly, I prefer those over the stormtroopers and whatnot, I'm not going to buy Battlefront, no matter what. I mean, obviously, if it's, like, very cheap and it's, like, 50% off or whatever, I might buy it, but I didn't pre-order it. I knew that I probably wasn't going to enjoy the game, so I pre-ordered Black Ops 3 instead, because that's just how it goes. And that's just all I gotta say in this video. EA totally dropped the ball, and the game's not even out yet.